Mr. Paul, Mr. Brad, if I can get your help with getting them into the seats. All right, please fill in, please fill in. All right, please sit down and be quiet now. All right, thank you all for coming and sitting down quickly. As you have been emailed, we do have a special guest today. She will be representing the College Board and the university admissions process in the United States as a whole.
Hello.
So please, this is an interactive presentation, so be kind, interact, engage, but be respectful in that when we do have to talk, listen up because we do have very little time. So please welcome Dean of Admissions at Boton Univerisy, Kelly Walters.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I love that. We've got the loudest voices in the back. Woohoo! Well, it is really a pleasure to be here with all of you today. And I hope that you're going to enjoy the time that we spend together for the next hour or so. You're going to be treated to something pretty special. You're going to get a chance to look behind the curtain, as they say, about the college admissions process in the United States. How many of you, who are the seniors? Seniors, raise your hand. Why are the seniors always in the back? You guys are supposed to be up front. This is about you. Okay, juniors, where are the juniors? Okay, wise move, good job, you guys, okay. Sophomores? And we have some freshmen here as well. Okay, good job, you guys. So one of the things I hear from students all the time is that what happens when my application arrives in a college admissions office? Offered admission or not. The process in the United States is actually far more complex. And this is why when students begin thinking about the admissions process, they feel like they're walking through a maze, right? Seniors who are in the midst of this, you know there's a fair amount of uncertainty in this process. There's some complexity, there's some confusion, but there's a lot of unknowns. So you should expect this, but it's okay. Follow your journey, learn and research universities, but know there are going to be some twists and turns along the way. It is to be expected. To set the stage in the United States, as you can see, and I realize not all of you will be applying to colleges in the United States, but I am here today to represent U.S. higher education. But if you're looking at universities and colleges in the world, there are nearly 24,000. That's a fair amount of research that you all have to do, right? But if you're focusing on the United States, there are about 3,700 2- and 4-year colleges that you can consider. For four-year colleges, because I'm assuming most of you are looking at four-year colleges and universities, bachelor's degrees programs, there are about 2,200. That's still an awful lot of research. Seniors, you're probably mostly done with your research. You're working on your applications, you're submitting them. But for the rest of you that are just beginning to think about this, it is good to begin early and begin at least thinking about the different kinds of colleges that are out there. I'm not going to spend time today talking about how you select a college. That could be a conversation at another time. It's certainly a conversation you will have with your counseling staff here, but I am going to focus on the selection process because that is the part that is least well known. So in the US, many of us approach admissions by using the holistic approach. Holistic or comprehensive review is really the cornerstone of the admissions process in the United States. I have the definition of what holistic admission means up here, and as you can see, it is an admissions process that is not based on just a single test score, but in fact, a full portfolio of information that you provide to colleges which we evaluate and assess. We want to get to know who you are as a student, hence the term holistic or whole person. I like to think of it as putting a puzzle together, right? You remember when you were children and you played with puzzles and you didn't really know what the final image was until it was all together? Well, that's in fact what the admissions process is like. My staff and other people that are admissions officers, we learn about you by putting these different components and these different pieces together. And it's only when we've read every single document in your application file do we have a true sense of who you are. So that's what holistic admissions is. Despite what you might have heard, SAT scores or ACT do not drive the process. Please remember that. The first question that most students ask me is, what's your average SAT? It may be a good question, it's a benchmark, but it is not the most important question you should be asking. It does not drive the process. So when we begin to review applications, and we're doing that now, because the early decision deadline is November 1. That's today. So applications are coming into my office and college offices across the country. So when I sit down to meet with my staff and we begin evaluating applications, there are two guidelines that we use. So this is part of the inside baseball. The first question that I ask everyone to consider, is this applicant a good academic fit for the university? We want students who will do well, who will succeed, who will thrive, and ultimately graduate from our institutions. So an admissions decision is in part an academic decision. So we're assessing everything about your academic record in order to make a thoughtful and well-informed decision. But there's a second question. The second question may surprise some of you. Will this applicant enrich the campus community? Why do we care about that? Because we're looking for students who will really make meaningful contributions to our community. And it doesn't matter what that contribution is. It could be joining our orchestra. It might be singing in an a cappella club. It might be playing on a sports team. But we want students who are engaged. Universities are communities, just like your school is a community. So we're looking for students who will give back and really enrich the experience, both for themselves and for their classmates. So those two questions, remember them, because you're going to be the admissions committee in just a few moments. So what are the application factors that most colleges and universities consider in the United States? These are the primary ones. Number one, and the single most important, is your secondary school transcript. The work that you have done here at school from grade 9 through grade 12 is what we focus on. But it's not just grades. It's not just your GPA. We learn a lot from your transcript. We see what courses you're taking. How many of you have pushed the limits and taken courses at the advanced placement level that are available here at your school? So how rigorous is your program of study matters, especially for selective college and university admission. So it's grades, it's difficulty of your curriculum, but we're also looking at trends. I know some of you may have been at this school for 4 years, some of you may have just arrived this year, others of you have lived in 5 or 6 countries around the world. So you've got a story, and your academic record will reflect that. So you may see some ups and downs in your GPA because you're moving around and you're in new school systems. We take that into consideration. We also look at strengths. Some of you love math and science, and if you could take only math and science courses, you would. Others of you may be better in social science or in English. And so we look for those strengths. So you can begin to see we really dig in pretty deep to that high school transcript so we can learn as much about you academically as possible. We also look at letters of recommendation. Your teachers will write those letters. They give us some insight into who you are in the classroom. What's your work ethic? How motivated are you? Do you participate in class? All of those qualities matter to us because you're going to be sitting in our classroom. So letters of recommendation are important. Standardized testing. You know, if you're applying to colleges in the United States, that most of us require the SAT or ACT, one or the other, not necessarily both. There are some colleges and universities that are test optional, but I'll be honest, the more selective the institution, the less likely it is test optional. And you'll probably see that. Seniors, you've already seen it. For those of you who are not native speakers of English, even though you're in a school where the language of instruction is English, you probably will be required to take the TOEFL. So please plan for that. That's another requirement. Personal statements are essays. I'm going to talk more about that when we look at the cases. Extracurricular activities. We care about what you do outside of school or in school, but out of the classroom. Why? Go back to the second question, right? We want to know how you're going to contribute to our communities. So all of these things, including personal qualities, characteristics, other factors like, are you a legacy? In other words, did your parent graduate from our college or university? There are many, many factors that go into holistic admissions, but these are the most important things. Now, when you apply to college colleges and universities in the United States, there is competition, right? That's what it's all about. You're competing for a seat in the class. But if you base your knowledge on admissions in the US, on the headlines in the newspaper, you're probably thinking, I'll never get in, right? Because all you see are the headlines for the schools that admit 3 and 4% of their applicants. That does not reflect the vast majority of colleges and universities in the United States. This is the reality check. As you can see, 66%, so nearly 2/3 of four-year colleges and universities in the United States admit 2/3 of their applicants. So while there are institutions that are extraordinarily competitive, it is not the vast majority of institutions. What's that mean for you? That you will get good news at the end. The process works. So that, I hope, is very reassuring. So let's now take a look at the case study. So, as I said, these are cases I made up. They are not real students. Do not look at your neighbor and say, I think that's you. It is not. But they are students based on your program of study here at school. So, this is where I need your help. You guys are on the admissions committee. I'm going to briefly present each of these 3 students to you. You all get to vote. You get to vote once. You get to offer admission to only one of these students. So this is a school that has a 33% selectivity. They admit 1 in 3 students. Okay, so this would be a selective college or university in the United States. It would not be a highly selective university, okay? You don't have to worry. It doesn't matter what university it is. It is a place that admits 1 and 3 students. And these are the students that we have to consider today in our admissions committee. I am going to present information based on holistic review. This is very much what I would do if I were sitting in a committee meeting at my school. So let's begin with Cindy. As you can see, Cindy hails from the United States. She is a U.S. passport holder. And we're going to begin, what did I say was number 1? Academics, right? We're going to look at her transcript. We're going to look at her grades. So let's take a look at Cindy's performance. Here is grade 9 through 12. She has a cumulative grade point average of a 3.5. So she's sort of an A- student about at your school. So when you look at her grades, what do you see? When you look at these trends in her grades, is there anything that stands out? Yes. Who's saying yes and would like to speak up? What are you seeing? Someone? Go ahead. There are no wrong answers here. What are you seeing? Okay, excellent. See, that is a perfect observation. This is exactly what somebody, an admissions officer, would say. I wonder what happened in grade 11. She'd been a pretty consistent student, right? 3.6, 3.6. What happened in grade 11? She dropped 2 more B's than she had A's. Is that a red flag? Not necessarily. But as an admissions committee, we would want to find out if there's any explanation for that. Is there an extenuating circumstance that the admissions committee would want to consider? So what do you think could have happened? Who has some thoughts? What could happen when you see grades drop like this? Oh, okay. Seniors, you guys are in the midst of this. What do you think would be an explanation for grades dropping? Yes?
A boyfriend?
Actually, you guys laugh. We see it all the time. We actually do. So yes, something in her personal life, maybe she fell in love for the first time, and so she got distracted from her studies. It happens. What else do you think could happen? Yes? Heavy course load. So it's her junior year. Maybe she took more courses, more rigorous courses. She loaded up on AP, so her grades dropped. Could happen. We see it all the time. Another answer. What else could happen?
Crippling depression.
Okay. So we're going from falling to love. We're going to falling in love to crippling depression. I mean, certainly, I'm going to put this in the category of health. You know, whether it's mental health, it's physical health, whether it's an illness with a family member. Things happen. You guys are living lives. And the things that happen can influence your grades. So the important takeaway is our job as an admission officer is we need to understand if there's a why. There's not always a why. Sometimes it's just students get lazy all of a sudden. It happens too. But we need to dig in. So other than that, the good news is she bounced back, right? Senior year, she's on top of the world, and she's getting the best grade she's ever had. So you can see, even from this discussion, why we spend a lot of time with your academic record. Now, we need to go on and see what kind of courses she's taking. So curriculum is next. So here you go, grade 11. You thought maybe she's taking a really heavy load. Do you think that's a heavy load, junior year? No, I would agree. I mean, it's a typical grade 11 program of study, but I wouldn't describe it as overly heavy. But look at grade 12. She's holding down 4 AP classes. And I think if I remember in your profile, you guys recommend 3. So this would be a student that is exceeding the recommendation at your school. And remember, she was getting her highest grades. So do you leave feeling confident that she can probably handle college? Yes? So we've got a heavy load senior year, 4 APs, she's doing really well, but it's still a mystery what's going on in grade 11. So we would describe this program as very demanding. Not most, but very demanding. So let's go on and look at her standardized testing. So Cindy has an SAT score of 1,300. I know, I'm trying not to block things for you guys. She took a subject test. She scored 610. And she took the ACT as well. And she scored 25. I know some of you haven't taken test scores. Seniors, you've got a frame of reference. How do these scores look? They seem to be typical of scores at your school. I looked at your averages. So these are decent scores. You know, if you're looking at an ultra selective school with an admit rate of 2%, these scores are probably not very strong. But in general, a score of 1,300 on an SAT is pretty decent. The ACT score of 25 is lower. And I will tell you, as a student, one of the decisions you have to make is if you take both an SAT and an ACT, do you send them both? If I were advising Cindy, I would have told her not to send her ACT score in because it's pretty low. We don't need to see it if it's that low, okay? But she's done okay. She's done okay with her standardized testing. Application essay. She wrote a very good essay. We liked it. I actually have her essay right here with me. I'm going to read you the first line of her essay. You can tell me if you like it. The 2 words most frequently used by others to describe me are cute and crazy. Each adjective is used with affection, the former calling attention to my mannerisms, the latter my personality. So she goes on, she's trying to give us a glimpse into who she is. But here's how it ends, and this is what I love. While I am flattered by both labels people give me, I value crazy more than cute. Cute is a friendly term, a pleasant moniker, but it lacks depth. Crazy shows that I'm not afraid to break the molds of society in order to satisfy my own desires. It means that I am a daring, vibrant personality whose lust for life overcomes fear of rejection and failure in order to explore and experience as much as possible. As an admissions committee, you know why I like that essay? Because it means she's going to come to my campus, she's going to explore, she's going to experiment, she's going to try new things, she's going to take advantage of all that is available, and that is a good thing. We loved the essay. It was fun, it was a little quirky, it brought a smile to our face. It wasn't intellectual. Your essays don't have to be intellectual. They should be more personal and all about you. So we liked her essay. So we then go on, and we need to think about her letters of recommendation and what she's involved with at school. No surprise, because she's a good student. Cindy received very positive, very favorable letters of recommendation. She is an active participant in class. She's one of these students that teachers can always count on to get her work done, get it on time. They say she's very collaborative, so she loves to help her classmates. So really, very, very positive and strong letters of recommendation. You can see some of the things she's involved with. She does Model UN, she's on the History Bowl team, she's a swimmer, so she has athletics. She does do community service. I know it's required here, but she's gone above and beyond the requirement at school in the Big Sister program. She is a student council rep. What's the bottom thing on this list? Can you read it? Moved to Thailand in grade 11. Do we have our explanation for grade 11 grades? We do. She picked up from the United States, moved overseas for the first time in her life. It was a transition. It wasn't a bad transition. She talks in her application about how much she loves having this global experience. But it was still a change, and it was hard. She was adjusting to a new place, a new culture, a new school, and making new friends. So her grades slipped a little bit, but she bounced back. So that's what I mean. You see how we put the puzzle together? You have a much fuller picture of who Cindy is. So that is our first candidate for admission. Let me introduce your oops, I did not mean to do that. I'm going to introduce your next candidate. This is Andy. Andy hails from Japan. And we're going to do the same thing with Andy. Let's take a look at his grades. So Andy has a 3.3. His overall GPA is a little bit lower than Cindy's. Would you agree that his grades are a little bit more consistent, right? He's a much more consistent student. So he didn't have some of the ups and downs that Cindy had. So, you know, we understood why Cindy's grades slipped one year, but he's a solid performer, very predictable. But we still need to figure out what kinds of courses he's taking. So I heard a geez from someone. Does that mean you think this is a pretty tough program? Yes? Seniors, does this look pretty tough? This is a really, yes, right? It's a really demanding curriculum. You know, so look at this student. He's got 3 AP classes in grade 11, and he has 3 AP classes in grade 12. When you look at his AP classes, do you get a sense that he might be better in one subject than another? What do you think? Yeah? Okay, so you think that science and math, this young man. So we've got AP chemistry, we've got AP computer science, AP calculus, AP physics. So yes, he's clearly very strong in math and science. But what's really interesting, I think, about Andy is that he also has AP courses in economics and AP world history. So I would actually argue that this is a pretty well-rounded young man, that he's not just focused on math and science, that he also enjoys the humanities, and so that comes through with his course selection. But there's absolutely no doubt that this is incredibly demanding. The other thing I want to point out, and I don't know if you've noticed this, many students and many of you might typically take 5 truly academic courses a year, and then you might take an elective here or there. He's actually got 6 academic courses, both in grade 11 and grade 12. So it's not just the advanced placement courses, but it's the fact that he is added on to his schedule these numerous classes. So we would categorize this as most demanding. This is one of the hardest high school programs that we could see a student take. Do you think the fact that he's in harder courses, even though his grades are lower, is that okay? I mean, you're the admissions committee. Do you think that's okay? Yes, I'm hearing a lot of yeses. Anyone think that's a problem, that GPA is still more important? No, nobody wants to go there. Okay, we'll talk about it again. Let's look at a standardized testing. So remember, Cindy had a 1300 on her SAT. He has 1280, so it's a little bit below that. And he took a subject test with 700, much better than her 610. So we're balancing this as we're looking at standardized testing along with grades, along with performance, along with curriculum. So Andy's essay was good. Didn't quite have the flavor of Cindy's. It was a little bit more straightforward. The first line of his essay went like this: "They call me the Rocket Man." So you guys are all laughing. See, this is good. officers to laugh. We read tens of thousands of essays. We want an essay that stands out. We want an essay that brings a smile to our place. Actually, we want an essay that after the first line or two keeps us reading. It draws us in. Frankly, I want to keep reading when he says they call me the Rocket Man, because I'm saying, why? What does that mean? You'll find out in a second. And while it was clever, after that first line, the essay sort of went downhill. So the best part of his essay was the first sentence. The rest of it was relatively mundane. And it, you know, it was okay. It was grammatically correct. But it didn't leave me feeling inspired about him necessarily. So let's take a look at Andy. He had amazing letters of recommendation. His teachers used words like brilliant to describe him. One teacher said he was the best student he had seen in 30 years of teaching. So there's no doubt that he stood out among his teachers in terms of what he would bring to the classroom. And as you can see, what is Andy's first activity? Robotics. Hence, they call me the Rocket Man. He was involved with robotics from grade 9. It's something that's been really meaningful. He loves to compete. So that's one of the things that's most important to him. What he lost in his essay is his essay was, he seemed to just be repeating what he did, as opposed to telling us what he learned from the experience, why he loved robotics. That personalization of his experience wasn't there. It literally felt like a step-by-step manual of what they do in the robotics club, and that's why it didn't stand out. It was just a good essay. He's also in the chess club. For his community service, he teaches coding to middle school students. Coding is something he loves. So he's got this Rocket Man thing, maybe engineering, but he also loves the computer science. He's got AP computer science, but he likes to give back. And if he could spend all his time doing anything, he says it would be coding. So this is one of the things he loves. He is a dual citizen. So while he lived in Japan most of his life, he does hold a US passport, and he participated in a summer program at Boton Univerisy, okay? So that is Andy. Our third student is Eva. There's Eva. Eva is from Australia. Oh. So I think by your reaction, you're liking Eva's GPA. So it is true, she has the highest GPA of the 3 students. But what else are you seeing? You know, why that reaction? Yes, go ahead. Yes, so she's got an upward trajectory in her grades, right? She's gone from a 3.4 all the way to a perfect A average in grade 12. Now, as an admissions committee, that's probably a good trajectory, right? What if it was the opposite, and her best grades were in grade 9 with the 4.0, and it was going this way? Not so good, right? So that's why trends in your record are really important. There's a bee that is not going to survive here on the floor. But I'm glad that Eva has become a stronger and stronger student. I'm glad she's doing her best work in grade 12. It is the transition year from high school to college. So it should send us a relatively positive sign that she's heading in the right direction and will enter our college and our classroom with this commitment, a serious commitment to her studies. But again, none of this matters until we see what courses she's taking, right? So let's take a look. Okay. You guys are amazing because your reaction tells the story. But you know, I'll tell you, when I'm in an admissions committee, my staff does that too. Because we're disappointed. We see the student who has done well, so well academically. So tell me why you reacted like that. Who's willing? What's the challenge here? Who wants to comment on Eva's courses? In the way back? Oh yeah, go ahead. They're easy. So I'm going to frame that a little bit. So I'm going to say they're less rigorous because they're college prep. You know, students with this kind of program will go to college and university in the United States without a doubt. But it is not the most rigorous program of study. We know what courses students here have available to them. We know what choices you make. We know which students are willing to push themselves. And colleges and universities care about that. They do, especially selective colleges and universities. So she's taken 5 academic solids. She's got math covered. She's got English covered. She's got social science, language, and science covered. She's got it all. But she didn't take the most rigorous classes. And it's not just that she doesn't have AP classes. But look at, for math example. Last year she was in Algebra 2. This year she's in pre-calculus. The toughest math class here would be calculus. She didn't reach that. When you look at science, she did have 4 years of science, and she did take chemistry and physics, so she's gotten through that. She dropped Spanish after the 3rd year. She didn't take a 4th year of language. So these are the things we look at when we're evaluating your transcript. It's not just your GPA. So please, please remember that. Now, when you look at her senior year courses, she took a lot of electives. She took courses that she wanted to take. Does it suggest to you that she might have an area of interest that she wants to pursue? What do you think? She's got English 12, pre-calculus physics, AP Studio Art, journalism, and senior seminar. Does she seem like someone that might be interested in visual arts or communications? She's probably not going to study engineering, right? No, she's not. Not at all. So again, your courses that you select tell us a lot about you and where your academic interests lie. Oh. So are you surprised? No. No? You're not. Why?
Because she has pretty well educated in English, so she probably aced the English section of the SAT.
And she has good grades.
Yeah.
Yep. So the question I asked is, anyone surprised? I mean, of the 3 students, and she is in the least demanding program, but she has the highest SAT. I mean, there's a couple of takeaways here, right? One is standardized testing does not always mean that you have the best grades in your school. It just doesn't. Standardized testing, while they can be somewhat predictive of how students do in college, so this would suggest to me that she's going to be a great college student, but it also means you're a good test taker. And we don't always see test scores that align perfectly either with grades or with curriculum. So she did very well. She got a 1450. That's a very strong score, but I would have expected that score perhaps from Andy in the student who's taking 6 AP classes, but he didn't have it. Application essay. So Eva, of the 3, had the best essay. You all, in your evaluation, thought her essay was excellent. So I think it's funny that you said over here that maybe the reason Cindy's grades dropped was because she fell in love. Well, guess what Eva wrote? My first love. See, it's like you had ESPs. So it's not what you think. And this is what I love about your personal statements and your essays. There's a lot of unexpected. So I'm just going to read a couple of lines of her essay because we loved it. My first love, Louis. By day, Louis is my trusty companion. By night, my partner in crime. Together, we make a remarkable team, traveling as one to move the small, familiar distances we commute every day. Blah, 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 blah. What do you think Louis is? A what? A purse? No. A purse? What do you think? Yes, Louis is a car. Yeah, Louis is a car. Yeah, Louis is a car. Louis is a little, I don't know if you know this, it's a little Volkswagen Bug. You know, it's those little rounded tiny cars. Louis happens to be bright yellow, so you can't miss Louis when Louis is driving around with Eva. And what was fabulous about this essay, first of all, there was the element of surprise. Because honestly, I thought I was going to read an essay about this young woman's first boyfriend. You know, we do see those essays. Students share that with us because it's meaningful. But in fact, I was so shocked and surprised, and it made me keep wanting to read. But as it turns out, there's a metaphor in her essay, and it's really about the adventures she's been able to experience driving around in Louis. She's been able to explore her town. She has felt a level of independence being on her own. She's tried new things, and she used that in a way similar to Cindy to talk about she couldn't wait till she got to college. The day Louis and I met, a door to exploration opened. I didn't truly understand how adventure-packed a small area could be, but Louis helped me uncover my passion for discovery and appreciation for dependency. Louis and I are not inseparable, however. The memories we've created are, and he will remain forever my first love. So it was a story. And honestly, this is what essays are. They're your story. The more you share with us, the more personal your essay, the more powerful and impactful it will be. But essays matter. So finally, let's find out a little bit about Eva. She also had very, very strong recommendations. I think the one that stood out most for me was from her English teacher. And her English teacher acknowledged, this was a teacher that actually taught her in grade 10 as well as grade 12. And she said when she first met Eva, her writing was actually not very strong. It was not polished. It was certainly grammatically correct, but there was no flair, there was no creativity to her writing. By the time she arrived in her class as a senior, she had completely transformed herself. She'd learned the power of language and of words. She learned how to tell a story, as you can see from her essay, and described her as one of her most improved students and someone who would have a successful career in communications, which, as it turns out, is exactly what she wants to do. So that was a really nice letter where a teacher could add some history to how the student had grown and evolved over time. So at school, Eva's been on the basketball team. She is a musician. She plays the flute. She's in the Environmental Awareness Club. She's a Spanish tutor. Student council vice president. Pretty senior officer, right, at your school? Eva has moved a lot. She's lived in 6 countries, including here in Thailand right now. So those are your 3 students. So I'm going to put a summary up on here just to remind you of the 3 candidates that we're considering as the admission committee. We have Cindy, we have Andy, we have Eva. They are all very different. Their GPAs are pretty close. 3.3 is the lowest, up to 3.7 for Eva. They have different kinds of curriculum. Some have, well, they all have AP classes. Some have more. We have SAT scores that range from 1280 up to 1450. We have good writing samples. We have very good writing samples. We have excellent writing samples. And we have letters of recommendation for all of these students that are actually quite strong. And we have one seat in the class, just one. So, I'm going to ask all of you, and remember, there's no right answer. Don't look next door. I'm going to ask all of you to vote, and vote once for one of these students. Yes, you had a question, this young man. No. Remember, I'm not here representing Boton Univerisy. So this is a university that is moderately selective. It admits about 30% of its students. But this is our university. We get to decide which of these students you most want in the class. So this has nothing to do with BU. Yes, in the back.
Are they all applying for the same major?
Yes, so let's say we're not going to make this complex, because we could. I could start telling you what they're going to study, and that would add a complexity to the discussion. But they're all applying to an arts and science program, okay? So they're all applying to the same program. Yes? Well, so the question is, does the school specialize? It doesn't matter. Universities and colleges that offer liberal arts programs often offer the gamut. So they have biology, they have math, they have history, they have philosophy, they have French, they have Mandarin, they have English and psychology. So our university offers all those programs, okay? And they're all good. Yes? Okay. Other questions before I ask you to vote? And I'm just going to prepare everyone. I need someone to be willing to speak up on each of these students, because I want to understand why you're voting for which of these students, okay? So let's I'm going to have it for a show of hands. Who would like to offer admission to Cindy? Raise your hand. Okay. Interesting. Okay, thank you. Who would like to offer admission to Andy? Okay. And who wants to go to bat for Eva? Who wants to offer admission to Eva? Ah, fascinating. Okay, thank you. So, what I often find when I do this with students, they see themselves in some of these students, and that's who they vote for. That's okay. That's fine. So let me, I would say about half of you were recommending Andy for admission. And then 25% wanted Eva, and 25% wanted Cindy. So as an admissions committee, we have to come to consensus. We're not quite at consensus. So I'm going to give you a little bit more information. What if I told you that our lovely Andy, oh my God. Andy's GPA just dropped to a 3.0. It was a 3.3. He has a bad case of what I would call senioritis, right? You know that disease? Some of you may. We hope you don't get it, but it happens. That students crash and burn in their senior year, and he has done that. So I'm going to ask everyone to vote again. Who would like to offer admission to Cindy? A few more. Okay, great. Who would like to offer admission to Andy still? Raise your hand. Okay, and who wants to offer admission to Eva? Eva, okay. This is fascinating. So we've evened it out a little bit more. It's about 30, 30, 30 based on your hands. Let me ask somebody. Does senior year matter? Yes. Okay, somebody said no over here. No, really, honestly. Do you think senior, you guys, we've only got a couple more minutes. Do you think senior year is important? Say that. So he believes that maybe for an application, senior year is not as important as what you've done your previous 3 years. And we're only seeing a half a year. Is there somebody that wants to make a counter argument that senior year is actually important? One of you guys, why? Okay. So, you know, one argument could be senior year does matter, but because it continues to show you're serious about your studies. You may remember a little bit earlier I said it is the transition year between high school and college. Certainly sends a positive signal to colleges that you want to do well. You know, what's interesting about, did you have a comment about senior year? No. What's interesting, I would say senior year matters. And it actually matters more than students imagine. Because there are some colleges in the US, I will admit, that make admission decisions without looking at senior grades. Not all of us, but some do. They base their admissions decisions on grades 9, 10, and 11 because it's too hard to get grade 12 grades. However, even those schools that don't use senior grades, we get your final transcript. We look at your final grades. And if a student's grades have fallen or slipped in a significant way like that, admission can be rescinded. So even though it might not be part of the admissions process, it matters at the end of the day. So I hope this is an important lesson for all of you. You can't take your foot off the pedal in the senior year. It does matter. And a drop like this, without any explanation, without any extenuating circumstances, would probably honestly be the kiss of death at a selective college or university. So please don't let your grades slide like that. Now, I'm going to just make it even more complicated. What if I added to the fact that Andy, not only did his grades slip, but what if I then told you he was a legacy? So he was a legacy. His parents graduated from our university. Would that, you know, and let's say the parents were, oops, this just fell. Let's say not only did his parents graduate from the university, both of them, but let's say they weren't just alumni, but maybe they were donors to our university. So, you know, and I'm sharing these scenarios with you because they're real. These things happen. These are conversations that take place in admissions office. And who thinks that the fact that he's a legacy might make up for the senior grades? Just raise your hand. I'm just curious. Who thinks that might make up for the senior grades? Okay, this is interesting. Why is it that more males are raising their hands? I think that might be wishful thinking. I don't know. The fact is, obviously, legacy matters. You know, we care about family affiliations with our colleges and universities. We wouldn't ask you where your parents went to college if it didn't matter. But does it make up for poor grades? Absolutely not. It does not. It is just one more piece of the puzzle. It is a tip factor. Let's say I had one seat left in the class, just one, and I had two students. Academically, they were identical. Test scores, they were identical. I felt confident both of them would do the work, and one was a legacy and one was not. That's the case where I would preference a legacy, and that student would get tipped in. But being a legacy does not make up for modest academic performance, in the same way that being class president doesn't make up for modest academic performance. We're really looking for students who can demonstrate that they can manage their coursework, do well academically, but also have interests outside of the classroom. So if it's reassuring to any of you, I will go back to Andy, and I will tell you he didn't really crash and burn. Yay. He had a good senior year. So we're left with the three of them. And so you're probably wondering what I would have done. Honestly, those of you that voted for Andy is who I would have voted for as well. And I say that because I know what kind of student would be successful at my university. And I know the kind of AP preparation that he's getting is preparing him to do well at my institution. And, you know, the fact that his essay wasn't as strong as the others, it was fine. It was well written. He just didn't have that creative bent to him. But I still learned something about him. And when I hear teachers describe a student as brilliant and the best student that they've taught in 30 years, that is a student I want on my campus. And I know he'll give back, because what I didn't tell you, you know how he loves coding? He actually created his own app, and he donated it to a senior center to help seniors that had Alzheimer's disease. So he's a pretty cool young man, and without a doubt, we would offer admission to him. Would I have wanted to take Cindy and Eva? Probably for different reasons. But Eva, I know, at our university would not be as likely to be successful. I love her story, I love that she's creative, I love that she's this global citizen that's lived around the world, but the fact that she hasn't been able to demonstrate a willingness to push herself academically, and remember, we're talking about selective college admission, that would hurt her significantly in the process. So I know it's lunchtime, I don't want to get in the way of you and food, that's never a good idea, but I hope that this exercise has given you a little insight into what the holistic admission process is like at colleges and universities, how we evaluate the information you're asked to provide, and the kinds of conversations that we have in admissions offices. So I just want to say thank you for your participation. You guys have been great. I want to wish all of you, and especially the seniors, the best of luck with your college admissions process. Remember, the process works, and you will get good decisions next spring. So thank you, enjoy, best wishes.
Wait. Let's leave orderly. We don't get up and run, sorry. One more round of applause. It's an honor to have Kelly here sharing her experience. So can I get the back two rows and the first two rows to leave first?